So breaking 80, we're talking in between wedge shots today. So those kind of 3/4 horrible wedges that lots of people struggle with. Let's see if we can get you shooting in the 70s more consistently. This is part of a huge comprehensive series, which you can also consume as a podcast on the Hack It Out Golf podcast that I do. But these are the video forms of this comprehensive How to Break 80 series. We've got every aspect covered. So when it comes to these in-between wedges, again, we see the difference between the break 80 shooter and the player who's struggling to break 80. Average distance from the pin from around 30 to 35 yards. This is from the rough, is 28 feet for the non-break 80 player. For the break 80 player, it comes down to 23 feet. And then when we look at the same distance and we look at up and down rate, again, we see the difference. It's a 14% up and down rate for the player struggling to break 80. It moves up to 20% up and down rate for the player who is breaking 80. Let's take a look at your equipment to see what you could do in there to help these numbers align a little neater. So let's talk a little bit about equipment to kick us off. You need to make sure you've got wedges that you want to play, and you need to make sure that your lofts are blending nicely to make sure you haven't got any huge gaps. So I've got a 58 and a 50, and I can do pretty much what I need with these two, and then I will go up to my pitching wedge, and I've also got another pitching wedge, but I'm blending these to work together. I can chip with both around the green. They can go within the same distance, so my 58 can go up to 100 yards, but my 50 can easily hit the ball 100 yards if I just come off it and then a little bit further. You can go down the rabbit hole of bounces and grinds. I think that's not going to make you break 80 per se, I wouldn't say, but if you want to go down that rabbit hole, I think it's a bigger question. I just want you really blending the distances that you hit with these wedges in a way that when you get on the golf course, you want to pull them. You haven't got one that you don't want to hit, and that's often what happens with amateurs. And we get to these in-between wedges and they're a bit like shaky legs, and they've got a club that they just don't like using. So even if that means having a chipper, something I use, anything that allows you to feel more confident with the shot that you're just about to take on. So some technique to help you with these shots that lots of you do struggle with, and I understand don't like. So what I'm going to try and do, and I want my students to do, is really try to keep the interaction with the ground completely unoffensive. We don't want chunks, we don't want divots, we want brushes, we want the plane landing really smooth into the turf. This is going to happen from not too much shaft lean, exposing loads of dig from that leading edge, so we'll talk about that in setup, and keeping it relatively neutral as it comes down. We don't want anything crashing into this ground. Obviously we want to hit it close here, but what we want to do is hit the green and not miss the green, and people are missing the green from these kind of in-between wedge shots, these half wedges, 3/4 wedge shots. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I've got the ball position somewhere near the middle of my stance, but the handle isn't crazy forward. So not ball back, handle way forward, which we see lots of people try to do. Remember, we don't want that leading edge crashing into the ground. Then the next thing, I'm also going to stand up a little taller. Lots of people get this club out like a normal iron, which makes that heel hit the ground and the club flips over, and then we actually get people missing the green like left with this shot. So you want to try and get just neutral with the lie. Don't be afraid to even put the toe down on a few. It does help people get a nice crisp strike, and there's a nice big bit of bounce normally at this end of the club. Let's get away from using this bit on a fuller pitch. We don't want any of this because that's going left. And then I really want you to try and govern the swing by how much you rotate your body. So hips and certainly chest away from the target and to the target. And I want your chest finishing relatively high, so feel like you're standing up out of it. Lots of people still are trying to kind of dig down into it where they start taking huge chunks, and they do that in their full iron shots as well, and it comes through to these small wedges. We get like this way, and then nasty digs. So you want that kind of pitch really coming from you rotating back and through, but we do want to extend out of our backs into that follow through, really get that chest up to the sky. Simple way of doing it is just put the club in your tummy button like I'm doing here, and feel like you turn it away, turn it towards the target, but when you come through, try and get it above parallel. Really feel like you're extending up. This will really help keep that strike relatively neutral. Now the next thing I'm going to try and do is make sure that my arm swing syncs with my body swing. So what happens is when my chest stops turning, my arms stop turning, and same the other way on the way through. What we see is lots of people kind of getting quite armsy with these, flinchy, and that's where those horrible strikes come. Again, just sticking it in your tummy and feel like you're turning your arms with the club, getting that chest nice and high on the way through might just help you crisp some of these strikes up and get you hitting a few more greens and lowering those scores. When you've got this technique down, I want you then to start practicing it with a few different lofts. So I would use my 58 if I want it to go up the air. If I want it to go in a bit lower, I might use my 50 and make a slightly smaller swing. Some people like the fuller action. Some people like a smaller one where they're doing less and just kind of running it in there a little bit more. You've got to find what works best for you. You're just trying to get it on the green from these positions. So many of you are still missing greens. We need to just hit the green. Don't get too cute. Just make sure the strike is on point. 3/4 wedges cost us so much, but also full wedges also are not helping people lower their scores on break 80. And if you want to find out how to play them better, this video's got all the answers in the Break 80 Complete series.